This training video is on devices. The first step to being able to understand projectors and the process is to understand the devices involved, and especially important as we're talking on the phone if we're troubleshooting problems, to be speaking the same language. So let's dive into it. We're going to start with screen 5 and then we'll go on down from there, just because screen 5 has the most devices involved, but overall I think it helps understand how things work together the most clearly. So we'll go ahead and start with the projector. When we're talking about a projector, we are talking about this. This is the overall device that projects an image on the screen. The projector is not responsible for getting the image that needs to be projected, only the work of actually projecting it onto the screen. So when we're talking about the projector, we're not talking about everything as a whole. We are talking about this unit. Inside of a projector is a lamp house, which is on the back, has a bulb in it. That bulb will strike past that light up here to a light engine. Light engine sits in here, and then comes out a lens. Lens is there, and then out onto a screen. The controls for the projector are right here on screen 5. We have key lock. Nothing's going to work till you press and hold that to unlock the buttons, and when we do, that's going to turn white. This is our power button here. Dowser, which a dowser is simply a shield that covers the light that's passing from the light engine to the lens. So essentially it just blocks the light from getting through to the lens and to the screen. And then this is our lamp control. Press and hold that, it'll strike the lamp, and once the lamp's lit, it will turn green. Our other controls that we need are over here. These are our macro keys or channel controls. They control a lot of things. We select if this is flat or if it's scope, and that tells it that we're going to be getting the information from the server. By information I mean the video signal that'll be playing will be coming from the server, and then we use the flat and scope for the lens to know its zoom and crop and things like that, so that the image appears properly on the screen. If you have an image that looks weird on the screen, there's a good chance that your flat or scope selection does not match what is on the movie itself. And we can tell what it should be. If we go to here, we see this is the movie After, and we can see here that it's scope. Now that's just the label that a projectionist gave that show. We can double check that by coming here to the feature and verifying. Right here we see this S, that the movie After, FTR, means this is the feature, and it's feature version 1. And then we have that underscore, so After underscore, I mean that's the title, the underscore separates. This is the type, feature, underscore. So now we're to our next field, and this is S, meaning scope. So if we come back here, we can see that this trailer is scope. So you want to make sure that your trailers match your features, and that your show is named, your show or playlist is named appropriately to match that, and that your cues, come back here, this cue is start scope. So we want to make sure that all of those match, they all say scope. And as long as it does, then this should match up, and that 4 will be green to show that that is what is selected. If that comes up as flat here, then it needs to be fixed. If it came up automatically and it came up incorrectly, then odds are your cue right here is wrong. And then the last thing we need to worry about on our channel controls here is number 7, which is adds DVI-A. So now if we come down here, this is going to show us what that DVI-A means. DVI, our inputs here, we have 2 DVI inputs. We're only using DVI-A, and that goes to the extractor, which is what the ads plug into. It is also the same thing that we'll be using for Fathom events and the DVR, things like that. So anytime we're plugging anything in through the HDMI switch, which is behind here, will come into the video signal will come into the projector right there at DVI-A. The SDI inputs over here are for your flattened scope. These come from the server. These A and B do not come from different sources. It just takes 2 cables to have enough bandwidth to get the entire signal to the projector. That's why there's 2. They are both coming from the server together. The image will not work properly with either one of those not properly plugged in. So, when you're troubleshooting issues, those are good things to check. Make sure those are tight. If it's ads or alternative content you're having trouble with, make sure that's plugged in tight. Make sure we are on the correct channel. And then your screen up here will give you lots of information. Right now it's telling us that we're in standby, and then it says lamp on below it. That doesn't mean the lamp is on. That means that it's set to turn the lamp on as soon as it comes out of standby automatically. If the lamp was on, this would be green. And then the last thing here is this GPIO port, which goes to the DFC 100, which is the 3D controller. That's what's used to synchronize the left and right eyes between the projector and the 3D controller. So if you're having issues with 3D, check, make sure that's tight. It is secured in there very well, though I don't anticipate that being a problem. The other bit of information you can get from here is on this section. These are all LED indicator lights that can give us useful information. Power light is off, just telling us that it's not even powered up. It's not running right now. But these lights, if any of them are green, that's an indicator, if any of them are red, excuse me, that's an indicator of a problem. So when you're calling to troubleshoot issues with me, always check right there on your PIB board and let me know if any of those are indicating red. So now we're going to move on to the server. The server is what takes the movie content and sends it to the projector. The video signal goes to the projector, the audio signal will go to the CP750, but it all originates from here. So the files are stored on the server. The server is, for screen 5, and this also applies to the drive-in, is the DSS200. This is your ingest bay. That's where you're going to put movies in to ingest them manually. And to do that, we tap the end here on this hard drive, and sometimes you can take a little nudge, but they'll pop out. And now we take this, slide it into the bay with the label up. If we turn this hard drive around, we're going to see a grate down there for cooling. That needs to be facing down. We're going to slide this in. Don't push on this. We're going to push like this until you see that thing start to move by itself. And now we'll just push that the rest of the way in. And we see our blue light comes on, telling us that it is loading up. Then to eject it, press and hold this little gray button right here until that starts flashing, and then wait until it shuts off. All the lights on it are off now. Again, we press on the end there till that pops out. Pull that lever gently, and now we can pull the drive out. Re-secure the lever on it, pull the drive out, and put it securely away. Here's your USB ports. This is what you'll use to ingest keys. then these are the hard drives. These first 4 are the only bays that actually get used. But anytime you see a red light down here, that's a problem. So if you ever see a red light there, you need to notify me so we can take care of it. The server works off of a RAID 5 setup, which means everything's redundant. It reads from all the drives at the same time. So when a movie's playing, we can lose any one hard drive and it won't even cause a hiccup in the show. The show will just keep playing. However, we can't lose a second hard drive without it causing problems. So as soon as one hard drive goes out, it needs to be replaced. And it will show you that there's a problem with a red light here, as well as a warning on your control screen right here. And this little icon up here will also be flashing yellow if there's a problem. This screen is the controls for the server. This is how we access everything for that server to control our content, our playback schedules. All of that is located right here. That same screen can be accessed. Say you were having issues with the monitor or something like that. That same screen can be accessed from here. Go to VNC connections on the desktop, screen 5 server, and we see the exact same thing. If I change this to the control screen, we look over here and that is changed. I can change over here, back to build. This has changed back to build. And that same screen can be accessed from the Projectionist tablets by going to Remote Desktops, Server 5. You got to click these the little menu, 3-dot menu icon here, and go up to Open. And there's our screen again on the tablet. So there's 3 ways to access your server controls for screen 5. Other indicators that you have on here, we have 2 separate power supplies. So if I were to come down to the battery backup and turn it off by holding the power button, then when we come back up here, first off we hear that squealing, and you see that red light up right there on one of the power supplies. So we'll go ahead and turn this back on, and that light goes out. Now if I flip the breaker off, that light comes back on. So there's 2 separate power sources, but in either case, the server is still on and running. Flip the breaker back on, that light goes out. The only way for the server to go out is to lose both of its power supplies, both the primary supply and the battery backup. This means that in a power outage, your server doesn't have to take the 15 minutes to reboot and start back up. You can get your movie up and going immediately. And last but not least, it does have a CD-ROM drive, which we never use. So don't worry about it. So we're back behind the monitor here. The ad player is right here for screen 5. HDMI switch always needs to be on in 1 unless you're playing some alternative content, and then make sure it gets switched back at the end. The projector takes 2 different video sources, either the server, which comes through the SDI cables right here, or through the DVI-A port right here for the ad player or for alternative content. From there, the projector takes the image, reproduces it using the light engine, which is a fascinating piece of technology. Maybe we'll do another video just for fun, just on how the light engine works. So the projector has the lamp house, receives a signal, recreates the signal on a light engine, projects it through the lens and out onto the screen. So that is the entire workflow for video. So now we're going to shift gears and talk about audio. This is the sound rack. So whenever I refer to the sound rack, that's what I'm referring to. When we were looking at the server, we were down here on the projector rack. The projector rack is what the projector sits on top of. Projector rack, sound rack. It could also be called a sound tower, for obvious reasons. It's tall. So, for sound, the server, which is down here, is sending our signal up here to the CP750. That is our sound processor. I will typically refer to this as the CP750. That is the correct terminology. From here, we receive multiple inputs. The green light, we see it says valid right here. Our lights here tell us that they're receiving a valid signal. Our actual selection is the buttons, the larger ones up here. So when it's on digital 4, that means it's receiving a signal from the ad player. For a movie, we'll need to switch it to digital 1. Now this is going to be done automatically in the cues, but in the event of having to do manual controls, that's where that change would happen. And then we have a volume control here, which is automatically switched back to its default settings whenever you change a channel. The sound processor takes those inputs, does all of its fancy digital sound work to it, and sends it down to the amps. The only thing you really do with an amp is turn it on or off. Power button there, power button there. Now the amps are divided up. There is 1 amp for the left and right channels, 1 amp for the left and right surround channels, 1 amp for the center channel, and 1 amp for the subwoofer. Now each amp actually has 2 channels, so there's really 2 different amps into each one, which is how we get more than 1 channel out of it. So we can have an amp for left channel, an amp for right channel, but they're in the same amp, so they're 2 channels on 1 amp. The subwoofer uses both channels bridged together. The center channel only uses 1 of those. So what that means is our center channel amplifier is actually giving us a spare channel. So in a future video we can look at how to swap channels in the event that you lose an amp. The booth monitor right here tells us what's going on with the audio in the auditorium. So we have a little speaker here that's just playing whatever's happening in that auditorium. So if I come up here and switch this to digital 1, we no longer hear anything coming out of this. Switch this back to digital 4. We're going to be able to hear it again.
Get the rewards you deserve.
We have our volume so we can adjust. Keep in mind this is only the volume for this monitor. This has nothing to do with what's coming out of the auditorium. Now for troubleshooting, this little switch here helps quite a bit because we can listen to what's coming out of the amps, or we can listen to what's coming from the processor to the amps. So these, when it's on process, you'll have turned it up quite a bit because it's not amplified. But what this will do is, if you are not hearing anything on the amp output, but you are hearing something on the processor output, the problem lies somewhere in between the processor and the amps, either the amp itself or the wiring in between. So here we can select what channel we want to listen to. So we can zero in specifically on the center channel or the left channel, the right channel, surround left, surround right, or the subwoofer. You can ignore these, say RE or LE. Those are for different audio configurations that we don't use. Only other thing on the amp is that it's kind of annoying to hear all these things blasting. So use it for what you need it for. When you're done, turn it off. Again, it does not affect anything going on in the auditorium. This is purely a diagnostic tool for you. The last thing in Screen 5's sound rack is the library. This is not specific to Screen 5. All the screens use this library. It houses the software for the TMS. It stores video content that we can then move around to different screens. Very useful little tool. In the event that you're ever asked to reboot the library, you'll just press this little button right here. Tiny little power button. This is going to start blinking. I'll get an email that tells me you shut it off, And then after everything goes dark, you'll just press that button again to turn it back on. I didn't hold that in quite long enough. You press and hold it for a couple of seconds, you'll see that light start flashing. That will let you know that it is shutting down. And again, with these, we like green lights. If we ever see anything that's not green, you need to let me know. So we've covered how video gets from the server to the projector. We've covered how audio gets from the server to the sound processor to the amps and then out to the speakers. Now we're going to move on to 3D. Screen 5 is the only one equipped with 3D, so this only applies to Screen 5. This is our filter wheel controller. The 3D filter wheel is inside the projector. It intercepts the light in between the lamp and the light engine, and it filters the light. In order for 3D to work, we need to have this turned on. So, right now, this is lit up, telling us that it's disabled. When you use a Start 3D cue, it will tell the DFC 100 to enable. When you do that, that wheel starts to spin, you'll hear a click in the projector, and then once everything is set and synchronized with the projector, this will turn green. It's not going to do that right now because we don't have 3D content playing, so it's not able to synchronize. And so we see over here this red light, servo locked. This is telling us we've got an issue. The issue is we're not playing anything in 3D. You will want to see a green light there. If you have issues, the movie seems blurry with the 3D glasses on, then you want to come and check and make sure that that is enabled. Typically that'll only happen if a cue has been put on wrong. A 3D movie should always look a little blurry if you do not have the glasses on, because that's how 3D movies work. It's giving you two separate images, one for the left eye, one for the right eye. So down here, this IMC2B controller, this in a former life was the automation controller for this projector. We've replaced it with a much better system, but we kept this in here because it has these two fancy little buttons that was convenient for us. So this is just the dimmer. Press that, it'll turn the lights up in the auditorium. Press that, it'll turn the lights down in the auditorium. And that's it. No other buttons on this serve any function. From there, we'll go down to the battery backup. Battery backup is important for helping us handle power outages quickly, so we don't have long reboot times. All you need to do is press and hold the power button right here, and that will turn off. Press and hold it again, you'll hear a big click, and that is on again. This tells us the voltage. That should always be somewhere around 120. And then our battery down here shows us that our battery is fully charged. In the event of a power outage, which we can simulate here, this is going to go to 0. That tells us the power's out. And then you'll want to watch this battery capacity, because once it runs out, then the server will die and it'll be a full reboot to get the movie going again. I turn the breaker back on, that comes back up to 120, everything's happy again. The other device we see on here, this Geffen scaler, is another thing that we've since replaced, do things differently. We don't use that. So you don't need to worry about it. And all of these ports up here are all part of the scaler, so none of that stuff that we use. Then we have a power strip down here. Just make sure that that switch is lit up and on. That's not something that we turn on and off. We leave that on all the time. Theoretically, we could have a situation, it's never happened yet, but could have a situation where that pops out and may need to be pressed in to restore power to devices. Now, for this next part, we kind of got to get into the guts. We're underneath the projector, inside of the projector rack, and we see this little device. This is the Junior, It's called Junior because it stands for Java Network Input Output Resource. Simple little device, but it does a lot of really neat stuff for us. It allows us to send a single cue from the projector to the Junior, and then the Junior is programmed to go through and execute certain commands. So you want to make sure that, you know, if you're having any problems with lights running or anything like that, you want to make sure everything is plugged in correctly. Everything's tight and looking good. So that's all in there good and tight. We want to make sure that this is lit up right here. We've got our flashing green light. We've got orange on the left, green on this side, on this network cable connection, because that's how it communicates with everything. Prior to the Junior, when we were using the thing with all the buttons there, creating your cues was a big hassle, because you had to put tons of cues on the movie to control every little device. But now you just say start a flat movie and the Junior knows what needs to be done to make that happen. Okay, these next devices have to do with our hearing impaired and closed captioning. This is the access link. It is the transmitter for both systems. The hearing impaired being the headphone systems, and the closed captioning for the devices that show you put in a cup holder and has the little screen that shows the words. They are totally separate devices in here. So we need to make sure that our network cable's plugged in, that we've got our blinking light here. We want to make sure that that antenna is properly attached. And then this thing looks like a jump drive. It's actually a transmitter. So we want to make sure that that is plugged in properly. The power for the captive use side, meaning the closed captioning, is right here. You actually have to spin this little thing off and pull that out to restart that side of it. That would be the closed captioning hardware. Then we have an on-off switch right there, again just for closed captioning. This side is for our audio. The USB here is the power for the audio side of it. And then we just use the AES in 2, plugs in right there. That comes from the Fidelio unit. So the Fidelio unit intercepts the audio that goes from the projector to the CP750. So it's going to go in through this side, actually in through this side. It says AES in, out through this side. So this is going to continue on to the CP750. Peels off the audio that it needs for hearing impaired through this, which plugs into here. And then the network switch for screen 5 is actually around the front side of the projector under the lens. And that's the network switch for the projector network, and down here we have another network switch for the building network. And that's all stuff that we will cover in another video on networking. And over here is where the printer's sitting. Projector 5's over there. This is all the DC-DC. Everything in this rack is just for DC-DC. We really don't touch any of it. It just kind of sits there and does its thing. And that's how we get our content transmitted through satellite. And that is it for screen 5.